What's up, EXP? I'm Cameron Cisneros, your chair for the Pride Network. And as we're heading into the third week of Pride Month, we have an action-packed conversation ahead. This panel is called Unfiltered because we're not here for the polished highlight reel. We're here to talk about the real, raw journey behind visibility, leadership, and personal brand, and how to show up boldly without shrinking ourselves in the process. This topic means a lot to me, not just professionally, but personally. Each of these powerhouse women joining us today has truly inspired me in a very real way through how they lead, how they show up, and how they pour into others while staying rooted in who they are. We're going to explore the unspoken truths behind growth, presence, influence, and the courage it takes to be seen fully. These aren't just surface level questions. They're designed to draw out the story beneath the strategy. So welcome, ladies. I'm so excited to have you on here today. Before we dive in, I'd love to start by having each one of you introduce yourselves, share your name, role, and one trait that defines your leadership today.
Oh, Cameron, thank you for having us here. I'll go first. I'm Kendall Bonner, VP of Industry Relations and Strategic Partnerships here at EXP. And if I had to say one word that has just been a part of my journey, it is the word grit. Is an acronym for me. Greatness is a result of intentional tenacity. And so I would say that's the one word, if I had to think of one right now, that really matters a lot to me.
That's so powerful. Thank you. What about you, Amy?
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much, Cameron. What an amazing event and what an honor to be invited to participate. My name is Amy Somerville. I'm the CEO of Success Enterprises, which includes the Success Magazine. And Kendall and I go way back. And one of the things that bonded us to each other is we both live in acronym land. We love a good acronym. Every presentation I think we give includes an acronym. So I lead by and live by the acronym of LIVE, which stands for lead, inspire, provide value, and empathize.
I love that. And we're going to talk more about that as we dive in. So I'm really glad you shared that. Wendy?
Well, I'm so excited to be here, and especially with all three of you, but these two ladies and I, we go way back, and it's fun to be able to share this moment with them. And Cameron, like, I've just been inspired by you since the moment that we met. I just feel like spirit with you. So this is truly such a delight. For me, I would say that right now, determination is just a energy that I am holding on to in my leadership every single day when I think of how we're just showing up in the world.
Yeah, no, that's so powerful. I love that. Thank you, guys. And I really appreciate it. This is going to be probably one of my favorite episodes that we're airing on this month. Don't tell anyone I said that, but
we're telling all the other people that you've had all month long.
So as we're jumping into this, I want to talk about identity and visibility. And so for Kendall, you're highly visible in an industry where representation still has gaps. What's been the biggest mindset shift that has helped you grow from just being seen to then owning the room?
That first of all, can I just say I've been interviewed by you more than once. And I have to say, you ask the most thoughtful, I'll say even as a responder, like challenging questions to answer, and not in a bad way, in a good way. Like you bring out like the best, kind of quality. It's like, you're just really, really good at this, I guess is my point. From moderator to moderator, I'm impressed by you.
Thank you.
I said that. I always feel like, oh my God, Cam is going to ask me tough questions. I have to really on these questions. But so to answer your question about, mindset shift around being in a room, especially in the world of imposter syndrome, I know like that is probably something consistently dealt with by a lot of lady leaders, a lot of women of color, a lot of women from groups that just are marginalized, right? And so I have to say for me, I tried not to ever put that kind of pressure on myself, to be honest, even though I felt it. I would try to give myself some grace, like, hey, I had this problem with perfection. It's like, you don't actually have to be perfect, Kendall. It's okay, right? That was one thing I had to kind of overcome. But the other thing was, recognizing and owning that being in uncomfortable positions is normal and it's okay. And I'm not alone in that. And that we all feel it. Like there are moments where we are all feeling uncomfortable, especially as women, right? I don't know that men feel the same distress that we feel about those things, but because I'm not a man, so I don't know. But
Right.
I'll say that as a woman, there's a lot of uncomfortableness that we feel like I don't deserve to be here. So-and-so is better at this than me, or what if I have nothing of value to bring? And I learned to tell myself, instead of saying listening to those negative voices, I've taught myself, well, what would your biggest fan say? And I honestly think about Amy Somerville all the time, because she and I, like literally, Amy and I have been best friends for a long time, and we have walked each other through those like crazy mindset shifts that we've had to, and we learned even from coaching each other, right? Like while you're speaking to others, you're speaking to yourself too, right?
Yeah.
And so we've walked this life together in leadership. And sometimes, like literally, it's like, what would Amy say to me in this moment? Like she would have my back. She would say a positive thing, and she would love on me in those moments and tell me, girl, you got this, and it's going to be great. And your voice is so powerful. Like I can hear her in my head. And when you have people, we all have people that love us, and what would they say? And whether that's a partner, a best friend, a parent, a child, a sibling, or whatever, look for those voices, living and not living, that would say something really powerful and positive to you in those moments, and hold on to that energy.
That's so powerful, because you touched on a few key points there. And I always say that we're the average of our 5 closest people, right? And you've intentionally cultivated relationships that are going to uplift you. Because I think a lot of times, especially as growing leaders in the industry, we may catch ourselves asking for permission to step into rooms that we've created. Like we've created this space, and then we're asking ourselves to step into like permission to do this, like to just let it slip. And like you said, like showing up authentically. And I think that energy, like when I saw you speaking at Win, you freaking owned that room. Like you stepped in there, and there was not a single person that wasn't glued to and hanging on to every word that you were saying. People were taking notes, and the vulnerability too in that, because you've always been vulnerable enough to say, you know what, it can be scary, but do it scared. And that's the powerful part of it, because even if you fail, every failure is an equal seed to a greater opportunity. And if you could take something from that, then it's a malleable value add that can allow you to grow forward and to continue to do it. Because we don't solve problems to end problems. We solve problems to elevate the complexity that we're able to solve. Right. So it's really great that you touched on that. That's so cool. So now for Wendy, we're talking about identity and visibility. You've operated at the top of the brand and marketing. You literally just won Housing Wire 2025, which is so cool. And at a leadership level like that, it can come with pressure to conform. So how have you protected your authenticity while leading at scale?
It's not easy. And I would say I've not always done that.
Yeah.
And I would say that, as you age, you begin to reflect. And when I look back, I remember thinking that in my 20s, I can remember distinctly having thoughts and thinking it's going to get easier as I get older. And before we came on camera, we were talking about like being younger. And I think that the three of us, as we've gotten older, would probably all agree it hasn't really gotten easier.
Right.
So for all of you who are listening, we don't want to give you like bad news, but it's probably not going to get easier. It changes, right? And I think that we adapt and we grow new skill sets and we grow new kind of muscles, if you will, along the way. But we still always are sort of fighting those insecurities as leaders, as people. I'm not even going to say as women. I think just as people, in how we kind of show up and how we look around us, and then how we see the reflection of that. So I would say how I've seen that reflection has changed, and I've become more comfortable that I don't need to look like everyone else and act like everyone else. And in fact, the more comfortable I have become with being different than everyone else and not being the same leader and reacting to situations in the same way, or reacting to situations in the same way that I see other people react.
Right.
The easier things have become. And when I say easier, not necessarily easy, because things are not always easy. It's always sort of a challenge to navigate through all of life, and business and sort of all the things that happen in that. But the more true to yourself, I think that you are able to stay with that, in that things don't always necessarily work out the way that you would want or the way that you would hope. But the easier it is to reconcile, I'm okay with that. And that I can move forward with that, and I can move forward through whatever those circumstances are, and know that I'm going to get through to the other side. And that has become, I think, easier.
Yeah.
So but it's day by day, and it's always sort of staying grounded in looking at myself in the mirror. And I kind of have a saying that I always say to myself, is that we do things for the person we see in the mirror.
Yeah.
And that is how I always ground myself, is say, like, what I'm doing for the person in the mirror. And even though it's hard sometimes, I'm doing it for that reflection I see in the mirror.
That's so powerful. And that's all rooted in truth, because when you lean into your authenticity like that, you show up so much more powerfully. And I think sometimes when, especially younger leaders who are listening, don't recognize that power that they have. And when you do, and you self-reflect and you're like, I'm doing this for you, meaning me, you start to think of it in a different light and operate at a different frequency, so that when you do face those obstacles, because inevitably you will, like you said, you're out to see it through to the other side. And it's not going to make or break or deteriorate that character as you're facing those struggles. Because we were just saying, every new level is a new devil. So, the more that we elevate, the larger the problems are going to become. Yeah. And you're walking into that with that self-awareness and that recognition. So that's so powerful. I'm really glad you touched on that. So now for Amy, we were just talking about it, you've built your life around LIVE, which stands for leadership. It's your core values for leadership. I want you to tell me more about each acronym, the 4 pillars: learn, influence, vocalize, and elevate. But
I like better. Yeah. I like yours better. Any acronym. I'm gonna move on that one. That's good.
Do it. Yes.
Yeah. First of all, before I respond to that, I want to go back and just say, Kendall Bonner, I love you with my whole heart. You are my community. You are my sister. Feeling is absolutely reciprocal, and the community, I think we've built it with the people on the screen and beyond. Just so proud to be here with all of you. And then Wendy, I think your comments just now about conformity, that's such a powerful and scary word. And I think it does. There's a piece of that comes with maturity. And I think there's also a piece of that comes with an attitude of wait just a second here. I've been conforming to a point where I don't even recognize myself anymore. And I'm not living in my integrity and my truth. And that is actually where the LIVE acronym came from, was a space of very much being in reactivity to my day and being who I think I was expected to be. And it was causing burnout. So it was a way of me to move from reactive to proactive and live a life that I could be proud of at the end of the day. Not giving everything and every response to others, but really kind of taking intentional power back. So it is lead. I like yours better. Lead, inspire, provide value, and empathize. And I think of the toughest of those for me, probably the bookends, leadership and empathy. And this goes back to Wendy's point about conformity, which is, I think I came up thinking that leadership was, or looked like, we'll go with that, it looked like strength. It looked like non-emotional. It looked like having all the answers, that kind of never let them see you sweat expectation of what leadership is. And I remember actually at a point in my leadership career being told that, comparing leadership to a duck on a pond. Like, leaders are gliding on the top of the pond and, look at them, so beautiful and elegant, and their little, I think their feet, the little legs are going like a mile a minute underneath the water, but they never let you see that. And I think that creates loops in your life, right? I'll just say it did for me. And one of those loops is you find yourself in similar situations over and over and over, and you keep ignoring the message it's telling you. And at some point, after 7-10 times, you're like, oh my gosh, why have I been ignoring this and pushing that off? And for me, vulnerability, authenticity, transparency, breaking through that conformity was my loop to push through. And it was a lesson, like I said, I learned many, many times before it took hold. And a major part of that, and who I really wanted to be as a leader myself, authentically, truly, was recognizing how big a part of empathy is in that, right? So not thinking that leadership is top down, but actually bottom up.
Right. No, but that's such a great way to say it too. That's why, I hate the word like manager. I like to say serve. I serve people.
Yeah.
Because it comes from a selfless aspect of it too. And vulnerability, I literally had you spoke directly to me about that, because I was so scared to be vulnerable, because I didn't want people to think less of me, or they would see me as weak. Yes. Or especially because I became a leader at 22, 23, and I was leading people that were double my age. And I was like, they've got kids older than me. What are they going to think of me? They're going to have this predisposition that I'm not qualified enough, or I didn't have enough life experience. But the more you lean into it and you embrace it, it actually became my superpower. And the same for you, it becomes your superpower, because you're like, you know what? It's okay to lead with vulnerability, to lead with transparency and empathy. And there are times that you're going to come across where we have to navigate that strategically. And so I think like Wendy was saying, the more you work that muscle over time, it does strengthen. So that's incredible. I'm so glad that you touched on that. Now, so this one I wanted to open up for the group. We talked a little bit about it now. I want Kendall, you kick us off. When did you realize shrinking yourself wasn't helping anyone? And when you realized that, what had changed after that? How did you show up differently?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. This is a great question. And, I can think of a recent experience, like in my current role, but I could actually go back even further to my lawyer days. And so I've probably got several stories there that I could share, but I will say that I'll never forget, because this was actually a time with my husband. Mm-hmm. And my husband and I have worked together side by side in businesses for a really long time. And we had to learn how to work together. And you're working with someone as close as that, like, you're close in so many ways, right? And so there's a lack of filter. This is unfiltered, right? Like there's no filter in certain relationships. And I remember I was trying to learn something new. I was learning it from my husband, and we do this meeting, and he's there to shadow, to watch me. So I'm supposed to be leading the meeting. I was practicing, and it was a real life scenario, but it was with a family friend. So it was a safe space for me to learn how to do this. And I'll never forget my husband in his, and this isn't a knock on him. We both grown a lot, but it's a real story. He got frustrated and he just took over the meeting and finished it. And I walked out of that experience so upset, in tears.
Really?
Because I felt like I was embarrassed, right? That he just took over. And I remember recognizing, though, there used to be a space in me that would have just let that happen and move on. Really forgive him, move on. And I have to say, the other beautiful thing about my husband and I's relationship, because this was many, 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 many years ago, is that we've learned to talk to each other and confront and have difficult conversations. And that something in me told myself, this experience can't finish here. I need to confront. I need to say something and express to him how he made me feel, apologize to our family friend, because it was very obvious to her what happened, right? And be able to, not allow that to make me shrink. Because I had a couple ways to react to that. I could have decided, well, I'll never do that again.
Right.
Right. Or I can stand up for myself, tell him how it made me feel, ask him, like, okay, give me real constructive feedback so I can do better. And then try again. But this time you can't be in the room. I'll just do it by myself.
Gotta go for this.
Yeah. I'm not doing that again with you. But the funniest part of that whole experience, or the win for myself, is because I didn't give up on myself. And I moved forward from that. I didn't let it crush me. I moved forward from it. There came a point in our business where I had a higher conversion rate than he did. And I had to learn that his way is his way, but it's not my way. And so anytime I try to do things his way and he sees that, he's going to be frustrated because it's not his.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it's not mine. It's not my way. So by stepping back and then, defending, standing up for myself, I was able to find my own way and my own voice, and I got really good at it. And so what are the lessons there? Number one, don't allow someone to shrink you. You're giving them that power.
Regardless of who they are. Yeah.
Regardless of who they are. You are giving them that power. Don't do that. Don't give them that power to shrink you. Number two, don't quit. Don't quit on yourself. That was my other lesson. Don't quit on yourself, Kendall. To stop here because you had a bad experience, that is quitting on myself.
Right.
And then number three, I would say, give yourself grace to know that every day that you do something, or anything that you do something hard, it gets better, it gets easier. And then guess what? You're going to meet and exceed your own expectations because you didn't quit on yourself and because you did it afraid. And so I tell people all the time, there's no courage or bravery without fear. So fear is not the thing you should be afraid of. And and even failure can lead to success when you learn the lesson.
Yeah.
So in that moment, I failed, technically, but really I had success because I learned from it. I did not let it crush me. I did not let it stop me. And I did not let it defeat me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like something that happened in my early 20s. And I think it's that willingness to push through those hard conversations has kind of carried me through my career.
Well, it's seriously such a transformative lesson to learn early on. I read a lot of Napoleon Hill, and what he talks about is that it's temporary defeat until you accept it as permanent failure. So if you simply just don't accept the circumstance for what it is, it inevitably will change because you sought out to change it. So if you just don't accept it, it'll change, and you just don't quit. And if you do it scared, because to be scared, to be fearful means that you care. And you take that and you lean into it instead of shying away from it. That is so powerful. What about you, Wendy?
I'm going to leverage a little bit off of what sort of a theme that Kendall opened up, because you will run into situations like that throughout your career. So I'll spring forward in my career many years. And the theme that I'll tap into is about how people will not always see your value. And and you're going to have to deal with that, and you're going to have to decide how you want to deal with that, right? And for me, that happened at a role I was at previous to joining you all here at EXP. And in that role, I, within the industry for many years, have always been very active with organizations like Inman, which all of us have been active as speakers in Inman. So I was asked to speak at Inman, like I had many, many years been asked. And that brokerage that I was in asked me not to speak at the Inman event because the CEO of that company doesn't like to have their executives speaking at Inman because he wants to be the person speaking there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to decline to speak at that event, which was such a just hurt my soul. And I didn't know how to reconcile that. 20 plus years in the industry, that the Inman community has been so impactful in my career and in so many ways. And, as an executive at this company and what I thought that meant, and all kinds of, you can imagine, kind of things with that, yet being, as you said in your question, sort of diminished and being asked to step back and hide myself and all of those things. And it was like a lot to kind of reconcile that and not be able to share that. Yeah. Because I couldn't, at the time, I couldn't tell anyone why, right? Why wasn't I going, right? I couldn't even really tell the Inman people when I had to decline.
Yeah.
And ultimately that led to me, departing ways with that company. And ultimately it led to this amazing opportunity and being here with all of you at EXP. But there were some, transition moments along the way that didn't feel so good.
Totally.
So, you have to work through that fear and that uncertainty. But if people don't see your value, it doesn't mean that you're not valuable. And that's the lesson that we have to hang on to is, as Kendall said, don't give your power away to someone else. They may not see it, but don't give your power away to someone else. Hang on to your power. And through those sort of dark moments and those uncertain moments, that's when you're going to grow and it's going to get better. You're going to get through it.
Seriously, you're better than me because I still would have went. I still would have went. I would like deuces. I'm gonna go.
I probably should have, but navigating through those things, right? Like those are tough moments when you're like, what do I do?
It's a high pressure moment, 100%. Is that all eyes are on you, and then you have to tread lightly about how you can articulate why you can't be present for something like that. And it's just so incredible because ever since you've been here, there are so many like Inman, Housing Wire, there's so many people that are elevating and spotlighting and recognizing your light. And something that I've learned early on too in my career is that people will shrink your gift to the size of what they can stand. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, inevitably, it's not necessarily always with malice intent, but if you're doing things that they've deemed impossible, or if you're outshining someone who's supposed to be in a hierarchical higher level, they're going to want to diminish it because in their head, they want to make sense of it. So they want to dim your light. And a lot of times that means we're in the wrong rooms. And when you do become in the right rooms like you have, you shine so differently, which is just so incredible. What about you, Amy?
Oh man, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't sitting here listening to these stories and I can think back on so many stories and so many points. I'm like, oh my gosh, that did happen to me. But I think, very transparently, I still struggle with it, right? I still struggle with those who I think try to shrink me. And I've had to take kind of a different perspective of it in the last couple of years. And actually we'll say like last 3 years, like I focus on self-love is the first part, is I don't need to be for everybody. but I can be for me and I can be proud of myself, and staying true in that is fine. But the other is that my mission is bigger than me. So if I am, there's the concept of the first mountain and the second mountain. I'm moving on to the second mountain. You use the word serve, right? I feel like that's my journey now, is I'm in a place of servitude. I'm in a place of being clear of my purpose and the impact on a bigger scale. So nobody can shrink that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if my mission is bigger than just me, the focus is different. The focus is, the mission is different. The power is different. The thought process is different. Like I've worked a lot of many years on self-development and how I make sure that I am improving myself every day. And that seeking of being valued and valuing myself and being able to provide value and all of those things. Frankly, there's a point of like that kind of putting you in a spin cycle of validating yourself or even defending yourself or whatever. I've really tried more recently to pull myself out of me and say, focus on the second mountain. What's your bigger purpose? How is it not about you and about others? And that really helps.
Oh yeah, and it's actually really cool that you touched on that, because we just had a panel with Holly Mayberry and she said the same thing, like removing yourself out of the situation and focusing on the intent and the purpose and its sole mission, and you really are able to elevate and execute it without feeling diminished from it. So that's so awesome. Now, for this next portion, I want to talk about, the price of boldness, which is what we've kind of been touching on already here. Now, I'm going to start with Kendall. Has there been a moment where showing up authentically had ever felt risky or maybe even professionally costly? And in those moments where it may have felt like that, what gave you the courage to continue to stay visible anyway?
Risky to show up and costly. Let me think about that. I would say I actually had an opportunity about a year ago, actually, in my role here at EXP, to do something different that I was completely uncomfortable with. So I don't even know if it was so much risky professionally, other than like I could have totally been terrible at it, because in my head, I didn't want to do it. I was uncomfortable with it. And I'll give you context so you guys understand what I'm talking about. I was asked to speak at an event, and I've done a lot of speaking, but typically when I do speaking, it's from a very specific place. And it's something I actually struggled with when I would do a presentation. I don't like to, I like to be tactical, and like, I'm like, here, like I've written a lot of trainings, but they're all tactic based. They're all skill based. They're very like, people are going to write notes and like go do something after they listen to me speak. Well, for this particular talk, I was asked to do something more on leadership and a little bit more inspirational. And despite what people might think, that's not how I see myself. Like, that's not my perception of myself. And so I did not want to do this talk. And I wrote it on the plane at 9 p.m. the night before, and the event was at 9 a.m. the next morning.
Oh, wow.
I was on at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And I had given myself I was going to fail. I was like, it's going to be bad. And it was because I had to show a different side of me that I'm not very good. Like, if you go look at my social, for example, I don't talk about myself a lot.
You don't.
I don't share a lot of personal stuff. I'm not like, look at me today and what I'm doing. Like, I am not that person. I don't talk about my personal self. So this talk was influenced again by, I'll give Renee Funk credit, from Win. Yep. That conversation around what are the costs of the excuses you're telling yourself. And that resonated with me so much that I leveraged it and turned it into this particular talk that I did it was actually the Agent to CEO event. Albie Stasek, John Kitchen, they invited me, and they don't know this story, but I did not want to do that talk. And because it was going to be too raw and too personal. It was too personal. And for me, I always worry how people will judge me or whatever. Like, that's just these are my own self-talk problems, right? That we all have. And I just thought it wasn't going to be good. I was like, who cares about my story? Nobody cares. Like, that's my thinking. And so thankfully, I was able to pull it together, put my stories together, tie them to lessons, because things like that is what helps like bridge the gap for me. And I was at the end of the event, I was thanked and said that was inspiring. And I ended up sharing some of the deeper personal parts of my life that have inspired me to be who I am today, ultimately, and have framed the woman I am today around my mother and my children and my marriage and, things of that nature, and turn it into something good. Yeah. So I would say that is an example of where I felt like sharing my personal stuff I'm not good at that, but we pulled through it anyway.
Yeah. And it's so powerful though, that you leaned into it anyway. Like, you did it uncomfortable, you stepped out of your comfort zone and you embraced it. And even if I've been there where when I started doing speaking engagement, I did not want to do them. And I just was kind of thrown onto a platform and was like, okay, figure it out. So I was like, shoot, okay, I guess. And like, you had an instance where I was literally like writing a script as I'm about to go up there and speak in front of a couple hundred people. And I'm like, we're going to wing it and we're going to figure it out. I'm going to do it. I don't want to do this. It's not really my forte. Cause I'm very much the opposite, and I'm learning how to articulate systematic processes. I'm very much on the inspirational, relationship building. But, when you're talking about building influence and stuff, you have to get into the nitty gritty mechanical logistics and systematic processes that you can actually rinse and repeat so that others can learn to do the same. And so that's been a journey of mine, like transitioning into that too. That's really powerful. So Amy, I wanted to kick this one off with you. So you've said that our egos protect our blind spots. And you had an episode on your Unscripted podcast I thought was really powerful. If you can shed a little bit of light on it. You talked about how you went to this leadership development conference and the egg, and you all had to sell different parts of the egg, and you walked away with that with so much insight. Tell us about, that moment where maybe it blocks your own growth, and talk about that story here for those of us that haven't heard about that episode.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I'll leap off of Kendall's response to say, so many times that you hold back that the boldness of insecurities or sharing things that you feel like you shouldn't personally. And again, I think the conformity and the expectation for what leadership is and what being a badass is all about.
Right.
Certainly couldn't be about your breakdown moments or writing an article that puts people's, in tears. But going back before I forced myself out of that comfort zone, I'll be honest with you, I use the CEO letter in the magazine for that. It is me pushing myself out of my comfort zone to maybe make a single connection with somebody in bravery and sharing, an authentic story that might connect for somebody. But before this part of my journey, I went to Wharton for a few weeks for a professional development program that my company had invested in sending me to. And it was, C-suite members of like Fortune 500 companies. And it was a kind of a combination of immersive practical application. We are all building public companies and competing with each other in teams, but also during the day, we were going through training, we'll just say general executive programming. And one of the very first days, they broke us up into teams, gave us all a little sheet with instruction. I'm going to explain this so poorly, with instruction of what we were supposed to go into a room to negotiate, right? And our job was to follow the rules. There are things we could say. There are things that we couldn't say, but at all costs, we had to leave with the thing we were going in to get, right? So I want to say there are 4 people in each group. Went in and I was like, all men and me. And I'm like, I got this. Like, I'm not backing down. I'm a great negotiator, a powerful leader. And it was like this tussle and rustle all the way through the whole thing. And like, we all left without our things. There's not a single person on my team that left with what they came to negotiate and leave with. So we go into the bigger classroom and the instructor says, okay, so how many of you left with, everybody in your team left what you went to get in for? And there are a couple teams that raised their hands. And I'm like, what? Like, did we not understand the instruction? Like, what's the deal? And what was explained is, right, so we were all negotiating technically for rare eggs. Each of us had something that we needed to get. One person needed only the whites, one person only needed the yolks, one person only needed the shells, and one person had to sell all of the eggs that they had, right? If you were having a conversation in negotiation and being vulnerable, asking questions, staying in a place of curiosity, you would have gotten to, oh, so do you need the whites? Do you need the yolks, right? No. I went in Billy Badass, like I'm going to walk out with my thing, and potential that I was the one who threw off the entire group. But it was one of those where I walked, it was one of the most emotional experiences of my life, of realizing that I had some blind spots, some significant blind spots of what leadership is, what conversation looks like, what everybody winning looks like versus bulldozing to get my way. And that was like, I've been in leadership a long time when that happened. So
Right.
yeah, I think it is, again, going in with a bigger person. It's not just about what you want and you're targeting to go get. It is like, hey, is there a possibility that we could all win here? And let's ask the questions to see if that's possible.
Yeah, that's so true. And you even see leaders, even in my experience across everywhere that I see industries, protect their egos by not leaning into those blind spots and being willing to grow and step out of that. And when you talked about that on your Unscripted podcast, I was like, we're talking about it on this one, because that is a great story to tell, especially when you hear from people at C-suite levels. You know what I mean? You're like, you know what? I've been doing this. I've been a leader, but really step back and open my eyes from this experience, But
I want to get Amy a T-shirt now that says Billy Badass. Like I am Billy Badass. Like.
That's me. I've changed, guys. I've grown. I've evolved. I've matured.
We'll get one of those like circles with the X through it.
Right. No, that's so dope. I'm so glad that you shared that too. And so the last question on this one, in this for Wendy, you're known for clarity and conviction. That is your bread and butter there. But has there ever been a time where vulnerability had made a bigger impact than certainty?
Yeah. When Kendall mentioned in the opening, just like, you're so good at this. So when you sent over the questions for us, I was like, oh, thank goodness she gave us questions. So I had some time to think about these, right? And to me, when I read this question, I went back to COVID. Because I think that through COVID, we did lead through vulnerability because we didn't know, right? There was no clarity to lead with during that time. And, I just reflect in showing up, through video, because that was the only way that we could show up every day with our agents, doing the best with the information that we had to, lead in, all the markets across the country, with, how we could continue to do business, right? And that was different in market by market. So we were trying to understand like what that meant and then share that with our agents in those markets. And then like real time, try to then support our agents. And that was a very vulnerable time as a leader, right? As humans, right? And that for me, I think was probably in my lifetime. I think for all of us in our lifetimes, we were just feeling so vulnerable on every front, right? None of us knew what was happening with our families, with our livelihoods, with our health. I mean, like every element of our lives just was vulnerable. So it was a tough time. So that for me, that is, I just go back to those moments and think of kind of like those last couple weeks of March 2020 into April, into May, into June, and just think, my goodness, like, and I have this like very distinct memory of, and I lived in California at the time, and I think it was sort of July, and like the ice cream truck came into my neighborhood. Like I've never been so much joy about like the ice cream truck, and like our neighbors came out, and like whatever time frame it was, like we were still in that moment where like you could only sort of go out into your driveway and like talk to your neighbors. And like it was the middle of the afternoon, and like neighbors came out, and like we were able to get like one at a time, like they go to the ice cream truck and like eat our ice cream. And like just what a just crazy time in the world. But that is definitely a time of like leading through vulnerability for sure.
Yeah, and that's so powerful because that's community, right? You're appreciating those little things and it brings you back and you feel grounded, and it's things that we probably once took for granted that we now realize how important that it was.
Yeah.
So,
Like I remember we hosted a like that fall, like still like, we were sort of coming out of, because it kind of got better and then it kind of got worse going into the fall. I remember we hosted like a national like Halloween party, like a virtual Halloween party with our agents, where like the families, like we all dressed up like this, like hundreds and hundreds of agents and kids and dogs. And we did like a pet contest of like send your like pets like dressed up in a costume. And like, just because we were like so starved to just try to connect in some sort of a real way.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were a lot of really like special moments that came from all of that, but such a reminder of like, we are just at the end of the day, just humans, right? And that community and connection is really what we all strive for every day.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm glad that that's such a true story. And I'm glad that you shared that because it leads us into our next segment, which is brand and storytelling. And also a little bit about media presence too. So it's so powerful to let you shed light on that because we are all humans at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And that vulnerability does empower us and allows us to appreciate those little things that we once overlooked. So now for Kendall, you've said yourself that your storytelling is your superpower. What's one story about yourself that you used to feel was hard to tell, but then became central around your brand?
Oh man, it's one story that has always been a struggle for me, is any story around failure. Where I have failed. Those are always hard stories for me to tell. And again, remember my relationship with my mother was this very high pressure, high expectation relationship. Meaning, my mom used to say to me to be the creme de la creme. We're French Creole, like, right? And it would be the cream of the crop, right? That was what my mom kind of impressed. So, and there was this concept around perfection and just needing to be perfect at all times. And so for me, one of the things, a story that was really hard for me to talk about was my brokerage. And a phase I went through with my brokerage during COVID. It was actually during COVID. And it was probably one of the hardest times for me, even as a business owner. If you've ever owned a business or you've been a broker owner or anything like that, there are highs and there are lows. It's a very different experience to be employed versus to be the employer. And during COVID was the first time in my brokerage's career that I had to like go borrow money because I started my brokerage without borrowing money and kept it afloat for years. like that. And when COVID happened, that was when I also first kind of realized, like, I'm not in control of my revenue. I'm dependent on these third parties to do their job. And, and so it was a really scary time. It was exhausting time as the leader of those groups, because everyone is looking to you to pour into them. No one's thinking about the fact that you maybe don't have anyone pouring into you. So your cup is constantly every day being drained by the people around you, because that's what they expect of you as their leader. And I felt the most uninspired, the most defeated I probably have ever felt professionally, like during that phase, just because I just was like, I just don't have anything left to give.
Right.
The tank is empty. And that was the first, and I'd fought so hard for my brokerage, right? My husband didn't agree with the model. He's like, this is, he had his ideas, and he wasn't wrong, or it wasn't about others being wrong or right. It was just a conflict, right? That we had where we were not on the same page. And so I always felt like I was fighting.
Yeah.
Fighting to exist, fighting to grow, fighting to be relevant, fighting, like just, it was a fight. And I just felt like ready to give up. Am I done with this? Why am I doing this? Because you're pouring so much into other people. And so that was probably one of the hardest stories to really talk about, but I've learned to reframe it over time, where it's not about the failure so much as the lessons, the comeback story, the recognition that with time comes healing, with time comes the solution, with time comes the next level, and with time comes gratitude, with time comes humility. Like, I've walked out of a lot of those situations, because also when you're dealing with, and I was dealing with a lot of things because our son, like, we had just some other issues kind of all happening. But I would say that coming out of that, I feel like I have learned and grown so much. And I've recognized two things in life. It can always be better, so stay humble, and it can always be worse, so stay grateful. And those are things that I've walked away with from all those experiences, that, like, you can't get too caught up in your own story.
Yeah.
Right? You gotta, like, pull out what are the lessons, shake it off, dust off, and keep going. Right. And so that's kind of where I think it's become my where I've grown past it,
Yeah. No, 100%. And like you said, like, failure is hard to talk about. Right. And it takes a lot to be able to be vulnerable about that, because we don't want to be perceived as weak, or we don't want to say the wrong thing. You know what I mean? Sometimes I tiptoe around my failures, because I don't want people to know that how many times I failed flat on my face before they see me be able to shine and grow. And it takes a lot.
You know what I've learned, though, is that people don't really care.
Yes.
We think people care. They're going to judge us somehow. They don't really care about it.
No.
But it's hard. Like, we care so much, right? And we put so much external, I guess, validation on that. So it's a hard thing to get past, but people don't really care. And when we think about, like, when people tell us about their failures, think about how we react. We're like, oh, Kendall, so what, right? Like, I still love you. Like, Amy, you're amazing. What do you care? Like, Cameron, well, come on. And we're like, what? Right. But we don't, like, we forget that, like, others aren't going to give us that same grace. Right. Like, we forget about that.
And one of the powerful things, like you said, is when you do get vulnerable like that, you enable a further, deeper connection with those that are listening to you. I've heard all three of you get vulnerable, whether it's on Amy's Unscripted podcast, or Wendy in the content that you share, or Kendall when you were at the Win Summit and you said on stage, you were like, you know what? There's some days where I am so freaking tired. All I do is I lay in bed. I have my bed day. And I'm like, that girl is me. She doesn't even know it right now, but that is so me.
We all think about Kendall every Sunday. And just I'm in bed today. I want that day.
Yeah, about that actually. Like, I'm taking a Kendall day.
It's so powerful because you rarely get to see people at that level that are vulnerable enough to admit that it's okay to feel tired, and it's okay to reclaim your space for yourself and replenish your own energy, because all three of you give so much to so many people. Like, it's unfathomable. That's why I say, like, you guys inspire me, because it's just incredible how you can both lean into your authenticity, visibility, while still striving to make a greater impact by not having to conform or shrink yourself. You're just out there and you're like, I'm here to serve, I'm here to support. What can I do to elevate you? Which is really, really freaking cool. You know what I mean? And so I want to wrap up. We're coming up on time, so I want to wrap this up. I want to throw this for all of you. What's one unfiltered truth that you'd give to someone who's afraid of being seen, and if they were to be judged? I'm curious, Amy, what do you got?
I feel like, short and sweet. If I were to sum it up in less than a sentence, you get this one beautiful life on earth that we're aware of, right? Live it for you, not for anybody else's expectations, not for conformity, with integrity, within pride, with purpose, and you're golden.
I love that. That's so powerful. What about you, Kendall?
I would say that stop focusing on what the story you're telling yourself, which is that, to Wendy's point, that people are judging you, and focus on the quality of the life that you aspire to live, right? And focus on, again, I'll go back to Wendy. I thought when it comes to stuff like this, especially the woman in the mirror, the person in the mirror, like, that's, who you're doing it for. You're not doing it for the validation from others. You're doing it for you. You're doing it for your family. You're doing it for the people that are looking up to you. Think of I think about the choices I make every single day and how that impacts my children every day. And at the end of the day, I recognize it doesn't matter what someone on the outside of my circle thinks. Have I earned the respect of my children by taking actions that I've taken? Like, I think about stuff like that. And so I don't care what other people think. When my babies look at me and they're proud, I'm good. I did my job.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Wendy?
That was such a great way to end it.
Yeah.
I think we should end it on that. That's the perfect ending.
It's golden.
Yeah.
But yeah, and seriously, you guys, I'm so appreciative of you guys being here today. And even Wendy, we didn't talk about it on the panel, but one of the things that you've said that has stuck out to me about media marketing, something that I don't think people do enough, is that you've always said social media is a conversation, not a billboard. And being intentional that when you're out there and you're sharing that story, that you are engaging with those that are responding to you. I've taken that personally, and I've been implementing it since I've heard you say that. And it has made such a grave difference on my ability to connect with people. And
that's awesome.
And all three of you have made such phenomenal points in this. And for those of you watching, I hope you have your pens and papers out, because take some notes from these ladies. This is fantastic value that they're dropping on us here. But seriously, guys, I so appreciate you. It means the world to me that you've come on here today. And, to everyone watching, if you're building a brand, a business, or a future that reflects who you really are, let this be your permission to slip. Let this be your sign to keep going, to keep showing up boldly enough to feel seen. Because the world doesn't need another version of perfect. It needs you. It needs the unfiltered, unapologetic version of you. So again, thank you guys so much for setting the bar high and then breaking it entirely. This conversation was unforgettable, just like each and every one of you guys. So let's keep showing up, loud and proud, and unapologetically real. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Cameron.
You.